You can hear it. That thing over there in the corner is working. And those fan bearings got quiet. They were quiet the next day. I just forgot to mention that, I think. So I butchered my bracket last night. And yeah, my butcher wasn't the best piece I cut to wedge in. I didn't cut right, but I recut and it fit. So that's a little offset, big deal. It doesn't weaken it any. Just more welding surface. It's gonna go forward. Problem is when you look up, yeah, it's gonna be underneath the cross member. So I'm gonna get the pivot up there. It's actually gonna come lower than it is. And obviously it cannot be on that angle. It won't work very well. So I gotta straighten that up yet. But I'm gonna put the pivot, probably try to get it about here instead of here. I still want it, unfortunately, forward as much as I can. It'll be almost the same offset between the two yokes as the fertilizer buggy is, and it works just fine. The only issue with it is the stick has a lot of movement in the cab because I think it gets closer to the pivot here. And the closer you are to the pivot here, the more movement you have. And I'm trying to keep it even or close to even. And since I'm lowering it and it's going to give me less room for the stick to move, I'm going to get more room between the pivot and the clevis on the stick. And then the stick is obviously going to have to bend a ways. I think I got it figured out. I hope I do. We'll find out. So it's not going to look anything like that later. But I've been wandering around this morning trying to find something that I knew was not in my pocket when I went to the house last night. Is when I go in and I'm going to go take a shower, I get clean clothes out usually. Not always. I mean, sometimes I don't get them dirty, so I just don't worry about it. But I empty my pockets from the dirties right directly into the fresh pair. I didn't have a tape measure. Well, I have looked all over the shop this morning. I mean, should have either been sitting behind me on a fender or on a fuel tank or right here, maybe on the welder. You know, very rarely do I leave it over there in that mess. Which, yeah, that needs to get cleaned up. Oh, the whole thing needs to get cleaned up. It actually drives me crazy because you can't get to anything, and everybody brings shit in here and stacks it up. Once in a while, it might be on a drill press. Very rarely, but I might have left it on the shop saw, and I know I didn't do that. I walked back over here, and I stood here for a second, and I went, wait a minute. I stood right here at the bench yesterday, dropped it. It hit the edge of my shoe. Bingo! I need that before I can do a damn thing. I've been a good half hour looking for that. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get that from underneath there. Then I'm going to figure things out. Well, you know, it's still a bit dark. Yeah, I thought it'd be lighter by now. We got, I don't know, about 4/10 of rain overnight. It just started raining again, of course. The funny thing is, though, it smells like snow, and it's 50 frickin' degrees. How does that work? It also has a little, shall we say, rotten nut smell from right in there. And I see 3 or 4 cows looking out the feed barn gate. They're going, I know he's going to come kick us out. Yeah, I'll wait a little bit. That's somewhere in the ballpark. I really can't go any farther ahead. I mean, yeah. It's about 2 inches forward of the hole I got to go through. Guess I can notch the stick for that. Well, bend it for that. Which I just straightened it. Looky there. I wouldn't grab a hold of that. I did grab it right there with my glove on. I still got a little red mark right there. Right there, yeah. And my glove shrunk a little in that one spot. Imagine that. I'm seriously considering. You can see little pock marks there. Yeah, that stick's been welded there before. Imagine when they made it. Seriously considering cutting it off there, so I got something short enough to work with to see how it's going to work, and then shape from there and weld it back together. Yep, you can hear them. Bunch of whiny butts. Yeah, I got the heifers fed. I got to pack a couple buckets clear over there for the steers and then get the cows fed. They'll quiet down real quick. Well, it has definitely been a day. Ended up feeding. Had to feed big bales too, of course. Trying to get this thing figured out. I shifted things ahead, which puts us underneath the cross member for the cab and away from the hole. But I think my linkage is right now. I might have gone too high when I did that. I just welded a 3/4 bolt to the bottom of what was there that had a cotter key about here and here that held it in the ball. With the bolt, it's going to have a nut on it to hold it in. That's how the other one is, from what I can tell. And it's easier to see with the phone, right? That's kind of where the stick's going to lay. That's a piece of hydraulic tubing off the big baler that was out here in the scrap. I just tacked it onto a collar and slid it on the top of the shaft so I can see where the stick's going to work. And I think it's going to be okay. I mean, that's just kind of a rough guess. I get finished up here and I'll go ahead and weld these solid. They're just tacked good. And get this welded up. And my phone makes noise. I'm seriously thinking about, rather than welding on up here with the stick, make a clamp. Just take a piece of heavy material and drill a 3/4 hole in it and split it and put a bolt on the back side. Because then you can get the stick on and off, and this doesn't need to be as long either. It goes right to the top of that bushing I got on there. I got just enough room to get this out of there, but I can be a little shorter. And clamp it on tight so the stick doesn't wiggle on it. And then if it needs to come apart, you can take the stick off and then pull this and take the nut off and pull this out. And I've played with the angle on this. It's actually setting where it's more even with the lever on the transmission. So I think I'm gonna get all this off, weld it up. Gonna go ahead and get this welded. This piece isn't flat, it's kind of screwy, so I'm just gonna leave the clamps on the way it is, weld it, and then try to pretty it up some, and go from there and see what happens. I've actually grabbed a hold of the stick up here and been able to put it into first gear. Didn't break any welds off. A couple things I did do was change angle a little bit, and I took 5/8 of an inch out of this piece. That's why I brought the stick back, because it was way forward. I don't need it that far forward, but you do want it to be as parallel to the other one as you can. So that's what I got. And number one didn't show up today. She spent every night here all week long and then didn't show up at all today, so little short bunch of stuff that should be getting done because it's not raining today and the sun is shining, but I still want to get this done. I can only do so much by myself. That's the way it goes. Welding's done. They're together. Paint's drying. The rest of it's hanging over there. I still need to paint right there too, but I don't want to get a bunch of black paint all over that pretty transmission and engine. I gotta pick that thing up off the floor and clean it up, and then I can wrap it around there and do that. But before I do that, I gotta take that yoke off anyway. Now, the boot's made to go on the floor, not over that, but it's still gonna go over that. It'll protect it. And it's laying right over there. So that's the day today. I spent way too much time sitting right in here, leaning way over there that's beyond arm's reach, and trying to figure out up here. I looked for a piece to make the clamp out of, to clamp on that stick, and I didn't find anything yet, but you know, maybe I don't need as big of a piece as I think I need. They do the same thing on truck transmissions anyway, and they offset them and bring them up. So they're not all that heavy. They're only maybe 1/2 inch thick, and I got lots of stuff over here, but not something that's quite wide enough. Piece of baler rail right there, but it's only 1.25 inches wide. That doesn't leave any meat around it. And no, I'm not using that 2-inch piece. That's way overkill. Chunk there, but I don't feel like cutting one out of yet. And a couple of them here. One of them here is 1/2 inch. One's 1 inch. So we'll see. See what I figure out tomorrow. I go feed the dogs and let the cows into the feed barn, and hopefully I don't get splattered tonight like I did last night. I was head to toe. They just had to stomp their way through and splatter me with everything they could. So anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good weekend. I get a little of this for you. Usually I go through this gate and open the other one and tie it back, and they just keep it coming. And it's a little sloppy. So I said, screw it. Gate will open that direction. They can single file it in. That way I'm not getting splattered with manure. Although a couple holdouts back here, they'll probably get me because, you know, just because they can. Not like I ain't been covered from head to toe with the stuff before, but, you know, I want to be able to go in and sit down and relax. Kind of hard to do that when you got splatter marks the size of a silver dollar every 1/2 inch up and down your pants and all over your shirt. Yeah, I really wanted to get that cleaned today. It's not only a pain in the butt for them, it is for me too. Neat thing about Oregon, they're in the mud 9 months out of the year, and that mud, they need a lot more energy to keep going. Just standing in it. You don't have to be walking in it, just standing in it uses a lot of energy.